But the three big ones in and around mindset that I see is a lot of not only Vietnamese but Asian entrepreneurs in general. Number one is they are not good at asking for help. Sometimes maybe they think that if they ask for help, they look stupid, or they don't know what questions to ask, or they don't know how to ask for help. So the fear of asking. And number two is they are worried about offending people. So they try too much to beat around the bush, they want to be polite, they are worried about rejection. And then the third one is mental fatigue. So what I see is on two fronts. So number one is they rely too much on subject matter experts to tell them what to do. So they have, I was saying to someone, they have short-term thinking. They just say, I have a problem, how should I fix it? And then if a subject matter expert say, you should do X, then they do X. They don't think, like, how will that apply in my situation? And then the problem there is sometimes you get different mentor, different expert, give them different advice, then they don't know what to do. So the three things I'll basically just talk about them in a bit more detail. So this is more about understanding that you need to ask, because sometimes you feel that if you ask, you look stupid, but actually everyone else has the same question as well. Because nobody there to ask, no one is asking you, right? The second one is helping people understand how to be kind instead of being nice. And one example here is especially with support organization or investor. If they don't want to invest in the company, they will say, oh, great idea, I love it, but maybe come back to me another time. Or I don't have the fund right now. So they don't help the company. They don't actually tell the company, oh, you know what, actually it's a great idea, but you don't have enough traction, or I'm concerned about your IP or something like that. So there's a difference between being nice versus being kind. And to be kind, you need to support and give it more help. And then this one is more around the mental fatigue. So understanding where does the feedback come from and what lens is the feedback from. So for example, if you ask investor, how should I value my company, or how much should I dilute? Normally investor will tell you on the higher end, like more like 25%, because that will benefit the investor more. Or if you work with a branding agency or marketing agency, and you ask them, oh, what is my problem with marketing? And they say, oh, you need a website, you need new logo, because they want you to pay them to build a new website and build a new logo. Right? So who is giving the advice and what is their benefit? So you need to understand, because maybe it's not your benefit. So you need to understand where the feedback is. So that's just more mindset stuff. Local challenges, so we've talked about some of this. Limited pool of startup, access to talent, maybe they cannot find the right employees for their startup, both in terms of skill but also compensation, local funding, and lastly is role models and success stories that are specific to that. So what can we try to do around that? So for example, branding, I've talked a bit about this with you all, but just talking to the rest of them as well, so that they find their own specialization. Another big one is pilot city. I think London is actually very good for this because it's not too big, not too small. So good for a company to come here and test their product, test the market before they go to larger market. And then how can the government play a role in kind of accelerating some of that? So for example, in Vancouver, what the government does is they have this term called eligible benefit corporation that encourage investors to invest in local company in BC, in our province, because they get a tax credit. They get a tax credit. So actually, a lot of American company they open Vancouver office because they want to get investor to invest and get the tax credit. Or sometimes government can have certain like a tax credit or grant for the company to do, let's say, research and development. So there's one program in Canada called the SRNED, so it's Scientific Research and Educational Development. That means if a company spends money on any innovative research, and it's quite broad, and not only for hardware, but also for software, if they want to try something new, then if they qualify, then basically they can get up to, I think, 70% of what they spend, they can get back. And that includes employee salary as well. So that encourage people to open business in Canada because they can get a lot of that research and development tax credit. US, they don't have some of those. So, and what can the government do to encourage people to move to Danang, because maybe Danang has some extra benefit for opening business here. And then university challenges, the big ones is obviously low survivability. A lot of student startups don't survive. Number two is I see a lot of universities run a lot of competition. And then the third one is the reputation perception. A lot of people think university is a lot of theory, no practice. So the first one is helping them realize that entrepreneurship is not a skill, it's a mindset. Don't expect that university incubation program will create startup. I think that is the biggest mistake. I see a lot of new organizations that always say, oh, our university can also run incubation program. Yes, it's good for a student, but don't expect them to start startup. If you don't expect them to start startup, then you are fine. If it's just more mindset training, then it's okay. But some universities, they want to create startup, and if they do, then the ones that I find effective are number one is if they have high specialization in specific research and development. Then if they maybe they want to spin up the technology. So maybe the professor or the faculty, they have something they want to commercialize. But then the problem with that is usually IP. So the university want to own some of the IP. So what can they do? Are there certain way that they can give back or give ownership of the IP to the company over a period of time or over a period of revenue? So for example, like after the university get $1 million, then the IP belongs completely to the company. Because the biggest problem is if university hold IP, investor will not touch the company. Running more hackathon instead of running competition. We talked about that. And then how can they encourage, instead of focusing on starting new startup, encourage startup to work with university. So for example, in Canada, there's a program called MyTax. And what they do is, if you want to work with a professor to do something with your startup, maybe it's design a product or maybe do some research, then the program is they give you some funding. And then you can use the funding to hire the professor and the student and work with the university. So it's not about starting a new company, but it's about helping companies work with the university. And the specialization if possible. So again, this is not entirely possible, but it depends. Like for example, there's one college in Canada called BCIT. They focus on trades. So like electrician, plumber, construction. So their program is all more focused around that industry. And then like let's say, FTU, foreign trade, it's more about import-export. Don't have to focus on tech. Everyone has their own specialization. And this is more incubator accelerated challenge. So we've talked a bit about positioning and competition, not only with sector, but also stage. So maybe some can focus more on early stage, some can focus more on late stage, and financial sustainability. So I won't talk about this again, but how can you sponsor? How can you design coding to be more profitable? How can you build a program that is more repeatable, like membership programs? So I really talked about all of this because those are your problems. Other things, just if we have extra time, we can go into this. If not, then this is extra. So what metrics to track? Generally, the main one is how many companies actually launch. Survivability, you're already tracking. How many people do they hire, funding they raise, and also impact metrics. Even if you don't run an impact-focused program, I think it's still good to track impact metrics if you have it. What to look for in your entrepreneur, because it's not only, if you want good survivability, it's not just about any company that join your program, you take them. You want to also select good entrepreneur. So they have to be smart, they have to know how to ask questions, but they will take action, they're coachable, they're not defensive, they're motivated, they will do things.
William to join, not only to talk.
They can decide fast, they're decisive.
That's
passion,
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understand how to teach. So these are more like what to teach them in the mindset piece, like teach them how to experiment, teach them how to test. The difference between grit and stubborn.
You see?
Another common question is like how to find co-founder and how to ask them questions and rejection. I mean, these are all fairly general stuff, so I don't know if you want me to talk about it, I can remove it. what makes a good business, so generally leaders in business, the team, what is their solution, traction market potential. What we normally see, so usually most people join the program after about 2 to 3 workshops. Most entrepreneurs are 25, 35, usually not their first idea. And the big one that personally I see a lot because I work in the social tech space is I personally find that the most successful companies or
Strong
highest
purpose.
survivability is that they care about something. They are not just for profit. Because if they only care about money, if they cannot make money, then they give up very fast. And yeah, recruitment, how do you find that? Do you have a specific team cohort, like around a stage or industry, like F&B cohort or manufacturing cohort? Do they have specific challenges? You know, let's say if it's F&B, then you can teach them about packaging, you can teach them about co-production, shipping, logistics, and what they're familiar with. And this is also a very, very big one. So for example, if you work with F&B company, maybe you don't want to use the word hackathon or incubation because they don't understand what is hackathon or incubation. They think it's tech. So maybe you use other word. Maybe it's like a program, training program, or maybe it's coaching program. So you have internal term for you to describe your program, but external term you need to use what they are familiar with. Refer partners, workshops, so pretty straightforward. Workshops, how often do you want to run them? How consistent are they? How do you use your mentors, your guest speakers, sponsors, free versus pay? I've talked about punctuality, call to action, so having a big one as well. What happened after? I see a lot of people, they run a lot of workshops, but then they don't do anything. Like they don't talk about their program at the end of the program, or they don't recruit companies. And also, how do you network and find good company in your workshop?
CTI, what does it mean? CTI?
Call to action.
Call to action.
Call to action, okay.
Call to action.
Call to action.
Call to action. Yeah. So for example, like at the end of the workshop, normally we would say, oh, we have a new course starting next month. If you're interested, speak to Zoom at the back and he will tell you more. Like that's a call to action. Pricing, how do you price your program? Early bird pricing, regular, or you can go upfront or monthly. This one is quite common with some incubator where they maybe take some equity from the company, you can do revenue share, or maybe you can take a percentage of funding if you help them raise money, or maybe you only get them to pay you if they hit certain milestones. So different ways of doing it, and guarantees, like how can you work those in as well. One example is we ran one program at Spring called the 2X program, and we did it because we find a lot of startups, they struggle with sales. Every time we run a sales program, nobody wants to join because no one wants to learn how to sell. They feel that selling is like bad. So we say, okay, it's a 2X revenue program. You join this program, after 3 months, we will double your revenue after 3 months. And we say, if you don't double your revenue, we give you your money back. So we have 100% guarantee. And what we found is we only ran this program once just to test.
You had to repay all the money?
No. We had 8 companies join. 6 of them doubled the revenue. 2 didn't double the revenue, but they say they got so much value from the program they
don't want
it.
Still happy?
Yeah. We didn't run the program because Keith just want to focus more on the fundraising stuff.
I see.
That's my program because I do sales.
Yeah.
These are all the different ways to support, right? So,
Investor training, see? Hands-on support with execution. Community.
What is in your community? How to create your community and get people to engage and discuss. So, I mean, there's a lot of things I can talk about. Like, some of these I can remove if we don't think are that important.